Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all here tonight. We're anxious to hear from you. We'll get started very shortly. The clerk has notice to read.
Please take notice that a public hearing will be held before the Cortland County Legislature on January 5th at approximately 6 p.m. in the legislative chambers of the Cortland County Office Building to accept public comments on the draft environmental impact statement for the proposed regional partnership with Onondaga County. The DEIS is available for public review and comment at Barton and Judas's website. Links can also be found on the Cortland County Legislature and Onondaga County Legislature's websites. Hard copies can be viewed at the Cortland Free Library and in the Cortland County Legislative Office. Written comments on the DEIS will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, January 17th. Comments can be delivered directly to the offices of Barton and the Judas or emailed to their offices. And public comments will also be heard and recorded at public hearings not only tonight but also tomorrow in Onondaga County.
Okay. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. As you know, the legislature began taking steps towards a potential regional partnership with Onondaga County in the late summer of 2013 as co-lead agencies. A scope for the project was prepared, including a public comment period, and the result is a 5-volume, 1,100-page draft environmental impact statement which reviews the various potential impacts the project could have. Tonight's public hearing is a requirement of New York State seeker law. However, it is not a question and answer session with your legislators. This is an opportunity for the public to voice its concerns with the document. So please be sure that your comments address the DEIS, citing specific examples and sections whenever possible. Your comments will be collected, reviewed, and a responsiveness summary will be prepared. The seeker process requires that your comments be addressed in the development of a final EIS. Onondaga County is holding their respective public hearing tomorrow night, and written comments can be submitted to our consultants at Barton and Judas until January 17th. Information on submitting comments can be found on links on the legislature's website. Due to the number of people who would like to speak tonight, we're going to ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. And please keep them to the topic of the draft environmental impact statement. I want to thank you again, and we will begin the public hearing.
Our first speaker is Ann Doyle of Cortland.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. On radio and in the newspaper, I have read the following. Cortland is going to send 25 tons of trash to DeWitt, and Syracuse is going to send almost 4 times that amount of incinerator ash to Cortland. Seems a little lopsided to me. Cortland also will have somewhat of a cash flow, not as great as Onondaga County, who is going to make money selling electricity. Several years ago, McGraw came here with information about improving recycling instead of paying so much money out. The legislators that were here then did not even want to listen to what they had to say. Cortland County always seems to be behind the times. And Cortland County also has one of the lowest recycling programs in the state. Municipal waste incinerators are now being closed all over the United States, and federal subsidies tax credits are drying up. So why would we start thinking about doing that now? Burning trash uses 3 to 4 times more energy than recycling. Bringing incinerator ash to Cortland near our sole source aquifer is a big mistake that could only harm everyone and everything now and for many generations. A health risk assessment has not been updated since 1990. That's 25 years of improvements and new techniques that nobody in this county seems to know about. You need to involve citizens in this process more than you have been doing up to date. The same reports you see should be seen by us, the affected citizens, instead of being so, I can't think of a different word that I want, but instead of being so secretive about things. People don't seem to know what's going on. Many decisions are made that we citizens should have access to, such as cost and treatment and road and sewers and buffer areas and so on. I urge you to vote no on this agreement until more information has been made public. If this process has been as good as I have been told, we would have settled this a long time ago. Thank you very much.
Followed by Rick Nausea.
I am Kim Curtis Harris from Truxton, speaking on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Board of Cortland County, an independent citizens association. Accepting toxic ash from the Onondaga County incinerator in return for our trash will be an economic and environmental fiasco for Cortland County. We ask you to just say no to ash. First, the economic impact. We can pay our bills without importing their ash. Over the past 5 years, Cortland County's solid waste facilities had an average loss of only $30,000 per year if bond payments for the recycling center are properly expensed. Flow control will bring in about $600,000 per year and will cover annual debt payments with no change in our current tipping fee of $60 per ton. Recycling is a moneymaker. It's the future. Recycling has much more value than incineration does. Cortland County has one of the lowest recycling rates in New York State. Expanded recycling could offset the impact of flow control, fill budget gaps, and extend the life of our landfill. A long-term contract to import ash is a risky commitment. Municipal waste incinerators are being closed all over the United States. Federal subsidies and tax credits have dried up. The ash for trash contract would penalize recycling. Cortland County will pay a large penalty if trash volume falls short of the amount guaranteed in the contract. Environmental impact, health and toxicity. Burning trash creates chemicals that are hazardous in extremely small amounts. Dioxins and furans. In Germany and Switzerland, the highly toxic fly ash is buried in deep mines. In Syracuse, Okra mixes the highly toxic fly ash with bottom ash and plans to ship it to Cortland. Okra's devices to control air pollution make ash more toxic. Toxins like mercury and dioxin are trapped in the incinerator stack mixed with ash and will be shipped to Cortland. All landfill liners fail. It's just a question of when. The last health risk assessment of the incinerator has not been updated since 1990. For people in Cortland County, that old report sheds no light on the health risks of an ash landfill in the recharge area of our aquifer, which drains into the Tioughnioga River and ultimately into the protected Susquehanna and Chesapeake watersheds. The Cortland County Health Department recommends that the health impact assessment must be updated to modern standards, but it has not been done. Energy. Burning trash uses 3 to 4 times more energy than recycling those same materials. Cortland County can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from trash transportation by disposing our trash in our county. Likewise, Onondaga County can reduce truck mileage by dumping their ash in a local landfill. In conclusion, bringing incinerator ash into Cortland County into the drainage area of our sole source aquifer is a mistake that could harm people and animals, both now and for many generations to come.
First of all, I want to thank all the legislators that are supporting our plight, and thank the legislators that are keeping an open mind to the plight. But to you that called me a liar, and those that stated that I made up or personalized my information that was in the paper, I want to say shame on you. All the facts are in this book that's up at the Village of McGraw office at any given day. You're more than welcome to stop in at any time to take a look at these things. The information is out there, like I said before. All you got to do is look for it. We have a book already started. The ash waste is toxic. We all know this by the science. Waste energy programs like Okra have to maximize energy recovery. This is technologically incompatible with reducing of dioxin emissions. The most lethal persistent organic pollutants, POPs, which have irreparable environmental health consequences. The EPA in recent studies identified dioxins as the cause of many cancers, the worst being TCDD, also known as Agent Orange. These are the things that are formulated in bottom ash. Science, it's tested, it's there. We need an ISWM, Integrated Solid Waste Management Program, which is recycling, reuse, all these other programs that are out there, composting. That's more relevant to our situation than bringing in ash from other counties, other cities, and other locations we don't even know where it's coming from. They have to manufacture a certain degree. They have to burn enough trash to make enough power for them to be viable. So they're not going to sort their waste. They're not. They're going to do what they have to minimally. They may take some of the metals out through their metal scanning process, but all the plastics, the hypochlorides, things like that, they're going to be burnt. They're going to end up in the bottom ash. That's just the way the incineration works. CC of SC, concerted citizens of Seneca County, have and continue to have issues with bringing in excess amount of trash to their facilities. If you've seen that facility up there, anybody been up there, it's not a nice place. They cover it up, they make it look as best they can, but it's not a nice place. They have a lot of leaches they have to take care of. It costs them a lot of money, and the citizens of their county don't even want it anymore. Why do we want it? We have petitions going around. Here's just about 80 people right here. This is only just a handful. We have many more. There's more to come. These are names and addresses of people that have signed a petition that are asking all you legislators to vote no for this. They don't want this. This is throughout our community and many other communities as well. The people are speaking. There may not be hundreds of people here, but they're speaking. They're asking you to do your job and represent them the way they want to be, the way they want. The EPA has stated in the past and continues to state that all liners will leak. All liners. Plastic, clay, impermeable rock, it all leaks. The composition of waste by itself is already just regular municipal waste. When it breaks down, causes heat, causes chemical reactions. That will in itself do its own damage. We know this. We have a leaking liner. We know that. You put ash, the toxic ash on top of that, the chemical reaction with that, with our municipal waste ash that's already in that cell we're going to fill, compounds this process. We know that because other facilities have done it and they've already had the same problems. Clay fractures and cracks. Diffusion will let organic chemicals like benzene go through the cracks, and now the chemicals will also break down clay. That's just science. Plastic HDPE chemicals, due to chemical reaction in the waste, in the heat, biodegrade, crack, and make them brittle. So all liners leak. They approved it. EPA already even states it. It's in their bylaws. It's in their regulations. If you can look it up, it's there. I can go on and on with all these studies and facts and histories and stuff like that. Like I said, this binder has a lot of the information that we've already been doing. This is information any of you could find if you wanted to. Take the time to do so. If not, come on up, take a look at it anytime you want. It's going to be at the Village McGraw office, like I said. We're asking you again, do not go through with this. We know it's going to be a hazard issue. It's been done in the past. Florida's done it. Rhode Island's done it. Pennsylvania's done it. They've had massive cleanups, cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why would we know it's going to happen if we do this? We know it's going to happen. It's happened before. It's going to continue. The process hasn't changed, so we're going to have the same problems. We're going to have millions of dollars and millions of dollars of cleanup. Right now, we may all be gone by the time that happens. My grandkids will still be here. Your grandkids, great-grandkids, your families, especially generational families that live here in this county. We don't want to put that on the burden on them. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lee Miller, followed by Roy Track.
I read the DEIS cover to cover, and although it was very long, I found it to be really skimpy. And I can't help but feeling if you guys had done it yourselves, it would not have been skimpy, because I still have faith in you. I have faith, or I wouldn't be here tonight, that you're not going to let us hang out to dry, and in the end, you're going to do the right thing for us. So I hope that at least you'll address these questions. When I looked at the financial analysis section, it talks about the profits you hope to achieve being offset by the cost of roads and the cost of hauling, but it never mentioned the cost of building new cells. That's going to be your biggest cost of all. It's a tremendous cost. When we built the 3 cells several years ago, it was $9 million, probably more like $10 million by the time you factor in the cost of purchasing the land. So if you bring that up to now, I don't know how much it costs to build cells. That should have been in the DEIS, but my guess would be it would be in the area of about $12 million. When I take $800,000 that you hope to make every year times the 17 years, it comes out to $13 million. But if you're going to have to build a brand new landfill cells to the tune of maybe $12 million, maybe more, my guess is you're actually going to lose money on this project. You're certainly not going to make it. The DEIS also failed to look at cumulative effects. For example, it talked about truck traffic. Every time it talked about any problem, its conclusion was, well, you already have truck traffic. Well, you already have a landfill, so no problem. But there are going to be cumulative effects. Having the truck traffic we have now, which is somewhat minimal, there's good days and bad days, is going to be way different than having 6 to 8 trucks an hour. And the DEIS never looked at cumulative impacts. It never looked at the difference between ash and trash. Ash is more soluble and it's more mobile. So what are you going to do when and if the ash escapes? Whereas trash would break down over hundreds of years, the ash is going to enter your ground and your water almost immediately. What are we going to do about the fact that for 6 years we had our public officials and people on various planning boards telling us when they were trying to work with TCI that this is the windiest spot in the county? Well, is it or isn't it? If we were lied to before, then we have some fraud going on, not by everybody, but by certain individuals. If it's not the windiest part of the county, then that has to be accounted for why we were told that for so long. If it is the windiest part in the county, what in heaven's name are you doing thinking about putting an ash dump in the windiest spot of the county? I was horrified when I saw that they planned to truck it in with only covered tarps, not in enclosed trucks. So these things need to be addressed. The wind needs to be addressed. The solubility and greater mobility of ash needs to be addressed. The pine tree cell leaks, that was never mentioned in the DEIS. It needs to be mentioned. What are you doing with a leaking landfill liner already? And how can you talk about increasing potential weight problems at the landfill when you've already got one leaking liner? Do you know why? Do you know why it's leaking? They talked about real estate, and again, they glibly said in the DEIS that, well, properties would have a hard time selling before. If there's a landfill, there's not going to be any difference. And again, I would submit to you that there's a big difference between having a big ash monofill where somebody who moves into a property may think that they may get ash blowing in on them versus a landfill. And I would like saleability looked at again and property values looked at again. It was way too glib, way too pat, way too easy, and that's not reality. It's not the reality when you're dealing with an ash monofill. And I might suggest maybe talking to people at existing ash monofills and see how easy it is for them to sell their homes. Some of the facts and figures were incorrect. I think there were typos. I think it was page 208, but I'm going to check again, talking about how many years left in the dump. And it says that if we take in the 95,000 tons, the landfill will be filled up in the year 2031, 2021. I just did the math, the very math that's on the page, they just had a typo. So we're talking 6 years. So once again, what are you going to do when the landfill is filled in 6 years? Screening protocols. They talked about this. We should not worry, they tell us, because there's going to be screening protocols at Okra that are similar to the screening protocols for trash here. So we shouldn't worry about what's in the trash. What screening protocols are at this landfill? All of us know that you can get anything into the landfill at any time. There is no screening protocol. And I think the small haulers should talk about this. There's nothing being screened at the landfill. I don't know if it's on your books that it has to be screened. It's also on our books that we're supposed to recycle. That's mandatory, and yet we can't seem to get it above 8 to 10%. So there's no screening at the landfill. I hope you know that, and that needs to be addressed much more, because that's not a confidence builder for me. There was no mention about tourism, and yet I've stood up at this podium ever since 2007 and told you about the Heart of New York Heritage Park plans. We managed to get part of the Heart of New York lands registered as a state historic site.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Please wrap it up.
Okay, we were told 5 minutes. That wasn't 5 minutes? Okay, then I'll just give the categories. I would like you to include tourism. I would like you to include the historic and the archaeological resources. I have said for many DEISs that there have been rare plants and animals on my property. The TCI found nesting harriers. They're endangered. That needs to be discussed. They also found a sound of bats that could be Indiana bats, so we need to take a lot deeper look at that. Finally, the pyrolysis section was woefully incomplete, and I would like to ask you to look at pyrolysis, which represents 100% recycling, no remainder. And finally, I just want you to know that we feel like we're fighting for our lives. And the DES is supposed to cover things like community reputation, the impact on societies. Our village feels like we are fighting for our lives. And so we ask you to include that and address us in your DEIS. The Village of McGraw's concerns need to be a category in your DEIS. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Roy Schreck, followed by Mickey Nagel.
My name is Roy Schreck. I stood here 2 years ago in front of you with Chief William Lazor from the Onondaga Nation Territory, Syracuse, New York, and he is not able to be here tonight, but he wished me to come here and speak on his behalf. So nothing has really changed considering where the Native American perspective is concerning this issue.
Sir, could you speak louder? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Is that better? Is that better for you now?
I don't think it's about the same.
About the same. A couple of years ago, I came here with Chief William Lazor of the Onondaga Nation Territory, and some of you were here that night, and for those of you who are not here at that time, that status and that issue has not changed. He mentioned that each of us still reside within the ancient Aboriginal territory of the Onondaga Nation, and so the Onondaga Nation is still watching the events here in Cortland County. At that time, we addressed some of the environmental impacts, and to reiterate that again, where I come from in that area, in a traditional framework, I'm sure some of you realize that we talk about the impact of what we decide in this room tonight that affects 7 generations of every single family member that you have in here tonight, whether they are in Cortland County or whether they are not. Many of you that are sitting here tonight have friends and relatives that for whatever reason can no longer live in this county due to economic pressures. You only get to see your families maybe once or twice a year. I know how hard it is to live in an economic area that is not the most affluent in the world. But you must consider the future of all those for several generations coming in the future. Your concern should not only be about what is left of our Mother Earth, but also about those 7 generations of those yet unborn coming. What will the future of your children and your children's children and your children's children be like if they cannot breathe the air or drink the water? We are on the verge of a great problem all over the world. These problems are not being addressed just tonight in this room. They're being addressed by Indigenous people at the United Nations conventions, and Indigenous people from all over the world are speaking up on behalf of their nations and their people. So from a different angle, I ask you tonight, please, please think about not only your future and the huge economic gains you may immediately get from this endeavor, but for all those generations coming. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Matthew Nagel, followed by Dean Miller.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this event, and Chairwoman, thank you for sharing with us that you're anxious to hear from you, and I think it is matched by our anxiousness to get a forum and to be really listened to by you all. And so here are my short remarks. Over the last couple of years, we heard that there has been a tremendous loss incurred with the landfill, over hundreds of thousands, maybe $600,000. And I'm a little puzzled by that. I know. Granted, I'm only a philosophy professor. I teach social contract theory, not economic contract theory. But I would like to see, the loss, the actual loss in your financial statement, not a projected loss, right? We see in the DEIS, it talks about underutilization. So I'm wondering, is this an opportunity cost loss, or is it an actual loss, right? What numbers are we being played with, yeah? And if it's the case that we are not filling our share of trash in this pay-of-play scheme that other speakers have already raised concerns about, I doubt we will do that in the future, right? Many folks think that we actually are going to be taxed more with this ash scheme coming to us if you're voting for it, which I hope you will not. And it just, I want to echo what others saying, that why is it that we would be penalized for not producing enough trash when the rest of the world seems to be thinking it's a very good thing that we are starting our own compost pile in our backyard and reusing, our bags to go grocery shopping, yeah? I've just talked to a friend who has, lots of bills to pay, and for that reason alone, she's recycling and doing a compost pile because she can see she may fill one blue bag a month. I actually fill less a month, and because we know statistically we're looking at 60% of our household trash as being food waste, right? And so if more of us do that, the power to us, right? Of course, what you may be banking on, what Ms. Miller has said of this lethargy in this county of only 7 or 8% of us doing recycling, even though it is mandatory. And perhaps now with the electronic waste bills that the state mandates, that will change. That would be a wonderful hope. But I'm also wondering about the environmental damage that is done to both counties at stake here. And here we have monster trucks that are barely covered with tarps, so we're looking at a lot of fly ash, especially the concerned neighbors to the road, and including the really incredible road wear and tear that we as taxpayers of Cortland County have to pay for, right? And so contract theory, I know a bit about cost-benefit analysis. Yeah, it just seems to be very lopsided that we get the very short end of the stick, and it seems very untenable. Certainly, as a moral philosopher, I'm also worried about the incredible health effects that are not addressed in the DEIS in terms of the recipients. We're receiving the ash. What's happening to our own health, and particularly, I want to speak to the health of the village of Lindrois. And to the point Ms. Miller made about the Heritage Park, there's my colleagues from SUNY Cortland have visited and worked with students on the land, have made incredible digs, archaeological digs, right? And do we want to put all that in jeopardy, right, by having a mono ash fill? And finally, in terms of the health, I want to again note what Rick Norseth said, and my friend Roy also said, what are we doing to the health of the, in Indian terms, of the 7th generation? Is it really this legacy of ash, toxic ash, that we want to give to that next generation and the generations following? So I trust you will make a sensible decision.
Next speaker is Dean Miller, followed by Lisa Williams.
Dean Miller was not able to come. He did prepare a paper, so I wanted to just read the title of the paper and the first paragraph and then turn it into you. Okay. He's a position paper on the landfill in the DEIS by Dr. Dean Miller. He just says that there's some fundamental assumptions. Number one, that the landfill sits on a sole source aquifer which cannot be recharged if it becomes polluted. Therefore, job one for this county is to protect the aquifer regardless of any other priority this county may have. And he points out that this was the EPA's position in 1993 when they identified the landfill as the chief threat to our sole source aquifer. So we're perplexed why this report and this study by the EPA was not included in the DEIS. Then landfills as a solution for human garbage are now being seen around the world as ultimately contrary to a community's best interest and therefore unacceptable. In the long term, they cannot be a solution to the problem. The human race cannot pile up garbage forever. How many landfills can a community tolerate before it destroys a significant part of the land and significantly pollutes the community? At some point in time, an alternate solution must be installed. The sooner a community inquires an alternative, the smaller the cost that will be imposed on it by its technologically obsolete landfill. In the long run, a landfill will not and cannot pay for itself. To believe otherwise is to cook the books. The long-term residual cost in monitoring and ecological after effects will last long after the landfill is finally closed. And then he takes a look at flow control, pyrolysis, 100% recycling options. And could I hand this in?
Take Maria.
Okay. Oh, and one other question. Someone from Onondaga County also gave me a paper, and I came out of the house without it. Can I hand that in tomorrow?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Williams, followed by Jim Weiss.
Hi, I'm Lisa Williams, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my family and friends who live near and border our Cortland County landfill. We are against the ash for trash proposal. There are better solutions. There are too many what-ifs, questions unanswered, and that probably never will be answered, that could cost our county millions of dollars that we cannot afford. Do you really want to risk that? What we need to do is look into the future of our children and grandchildren and ask what is best for them. I believe that we, as a county, should keep our landfill open as long as possible. And if done right, it could last 40 or 50 years. So again, please, I'm asking you to vote no on the ash for trash proposal so we can move on to a better solution. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jim Weiss, followed by Lori Smith.
My husband was embarrassed to come before you as a waste barrel, but I'm not. And I'd like to just say that others have spoken very eloquently to the DEIS this evening. There are some very serious issues to be considered, despite my funny costume. And ultimately, I would like to add one thing. These people are here, and you are representing us. If we still live in a democracy, then you obviously know what vote you should be making on this done.
The next speaker is Larry Smith, followed by Sherry Sheridan.
Good evening, I'm Larry Smith. This project will have a negative impact on the village of McGraw. Its community character, its real estate and safe saleability, its potential tourist development, its water supply, and the strong opposition of this project was never addressed. None of these were addressed by the DEIS, and they should be. And I would just like my kids to grow up and have clean water and air than I have today. My grandkids. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sherry Sheridan, followed by Lori Morris.
Legislators, I appreciate the honor, letting me speak. My name is Sherry Sheridan. I'm concerned about the proposed trash for ash plan that is being proposed for a number of reasons. Every piece of property that I own is on one or more of the proposed trucking routes. First, I question the safety of the contents of the ash with its dioxins and heavy metals. I am not convinced that it is safe on any level. I am concerned that delivering it to our county by truck, that the contaminated ash will be spread through the air and being used as a cover will mix with all the other chemicals at our landfill, possibly causing serious problems with McGraw's aquifer. To date, no one has tested our leachate with the incinerator ash to check those possible results. That needs to be done before we move forward. Secondly, I believe as a county that we should be looking forward to a future of recycling, reusing, repurposing our own refuse, not choosing a plan like ash for trash, which would penalize us for doing so. I would feel better if the legislature used time and money, as you did to investigate the proposed ash for trash plan, as if you had done the same amount of money being put towards investigating how we could recycle for our county in a better way to make money. The alternative, which would include much more recycling and its positive monetary results. Laid out as two plans to compare and contrast, we could have a clearer vision what plan would be the best to serve our residents of our community. Third, I feel that the real and underlying problem was caused by the mismanagement of our landfill. That is financially sustainable and under the proper supervision would not be under such pressure to seek Onondaga's trash to fill our landfill to pay our bills. To my knowledge, the legislator has not included the hidden costs of such things as bridge and road reconstruction to support the heavy truckloads. East River Road and the Loring Crossing Bridge are not suitable for repeated heavy truck traffic. Suitcode is not allowed to drive their truck product to its Popeville distribution plant over that bridge. Please rethink this ash for trash plan for a better future for our landfill, to protect our water and air and our people. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Lori Morris, followed by Pam Jenkins.
Good evening. My name is Lori Mortis, and I've been a longtime resident of McGraw for 54 years. Very happy to live here. We have a very rich heritage, I want to believe, and I hope we will keep that intact. What bothers me is we don't have a lot of knowledge in our village. This ash seems to be very friable, and we can be walking down the street if these trucks pass us by, and I understand now that they may not even have a secure cover on them. And there's a higher incidence of lung cancer that we haven't even brought up the health effects from the exposure to these minute little air particles. So that being said, I really don't think it's very prudent for us to even consider doing this in McGraw. There's so many risk and so many known heavy metals that who's surveying these? Who's watching these? Where's the MSD sheets on these particular heavy metals that are coming in? Do we know the effects? Do we know if we're exposed to them, what we are to do? There's just so many unspoken issues here. And we've already seen raised incidents of leukemia in our town over the years. Speaking for my sister who passed away in 1979. I saw that firsthand, watching a family member succumb to, illness. And I think if we let this come in, if we don't stand up and say no now, we're just going to see our families, this may happen to more people. And I really don't want to see this happen. So I don't think it's prudent to even entertain the thought of allowing this to come to our village. We have a village that brought the first college, the first freedom. We have a rich history here. Underground railroad. And to allow this, I just can't even believe it. I have faith that this is going to be taken care of in the right way. I want to believe that. I have faith in you that you will do the right thing for us. I want to continue living here feeling safe. I want my friends, my neighbors, and everyone to feel safe. And right now, it's at risk, and I don't like that feeling. So I plead with you to really reconsider even entertaining this thought. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Pam Jenkins, followed by Doug Bethany.
Legislators, we have been studying the Ash for Trash project for 1.5 years. We must inform you that new health impact assessments must be done per federal CDC protocols. They need to be done for each county. They have not been done. Current medical knowledge recognizes that incinerator emissions and incinerator ash contain disease-causing toxins. We want to know how many excess cancers and other diseases are expected to be caused by continued operation of the incinerator and the projected ash dump. We pointed out that the final scope, and the DEIS were lacking and grossly inadequate and non-compliant with secret law. We were ignored. Budget details and financial details have been concealed from us. Most of our written and spoken questions and comments have not been addressed and do not appear in the DEIS. The information we requested is absent. There exists no basis upon which we can see how you are making your decisions. For a multitude of reasons, the only reasonable conclusion we can come to is that the Ash for Trash process should immediately be suspended. And we will say the same thing in Onondaga County tomorrow, where we will be given 15 minutes to speak per person. Instead of filling up our landfill with Onondaga County incinerator ash, we should be taking steps to maximize recycling and composting. These steps would result in us not having to build new landfill spaces in the near future. This would save money and the environment. Instead of having up to several million tons of toxin-laden ash placed in the recharge zone of our aquifer, along with the liability for that ash, we should build businesses based upon recycling, reuse, and composting. We intend to bring in more leaders in the zero waste field to instruct Cortland in these things that are being done in communities around the world. Huge savings in greenhouse gas production would be achieved by these steps. Onondaga could use its own landfill for its disposal needs. They don't want to. Indeed, the OCRA 2014 annual report suggests that they need to consider using the Onondaga County landfill. We have asked Barton and LaJudas to recompute all greenhouse gas estimates based upon recycling, composting, and Onondaga County using its own landfill. We ask you, legislators, to be courageous. Join with legislators in Cortland County and in Onondaga County to suspend the Ash for Trash project. Support phasing out of the Okra incinerator, as many communities around the country are doing. My DEIS
very specific comments will be electronically mailed because of the time constraints, but I would like them to be attached to this testimony. And I'd like you to know that recent laws in California require 100 years of post-landfill closure monitoring and funds to cover that. So I'd like to know, if that happens in New York State, what would it cost to monitor an mixed waste ash landfill for 100 years? Since I probably have a little more time, I can go over a couple of things that are completely lacking from the DEIS. Things which SECR law requires. SECR law requires a discussion of catastrophic consequences. It is completely lacking in the DEIS. SECR law requires the financial discussion in depth. It's basically lacking in the DEIS. The Cortland County Health Department, also their recommendations that a health impact assessment be done, that's completely lacking in the DEIS. It's not even mentioned. And of course, most of our comments and questions over the last year and a half have been ignored. And so we ask you to really just suspend this process. We've spent a couple of $100,000 already. It's gotten us in a big hole, and the hole will only get deeper if you don't suspend it now. So no ash. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Doug Bentley, followed by Allison King.
Thanks for inviting us all here, and I want to commend you on making all that paperwork so easily available on the internet. 1,100 pages. I can't read that fast, so I had to forward it to somebody who reads faster, and she did a good job. 7 months ago, I didn't know anything about ashes or waste. I read a little letter in the paper by a fellow by the name of Bob Martin. I never was able to connect with him, but he recommended this book, The Zero Waste Solution, Untrashing the Planet, One Community at a Time. How the print gets finer. How cities and towns around the world are saying no to incinerators and wasteful product design, and yes to radical recycling, reuse, entrepreneurs, and the jobs they create. So I didn't know anything about trash. Now I'm an expert. I read this book, and the sections on incineration were pretty scary. I thought Stephen King was scary, but this stuff is, really got my attention. And so I just asked that we vote no on this project. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Allison King, followed by Francis Boulier.
Hi, I'm Allison King, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Board of Cortland County. This is an independent citizens association, and we got together this year really because we didn't want to just be saying what won't work, but we wanted to say what's an alternative, what are some solutions. Here you have what we're proposing. So the Environmental Advisory Board supports environmentally and fiscally responsible management of solid waste in Cortland County. We are proposing goals and solutions for our county's solid waste management. And these solutions can be achieved by building partnerships across our community with businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions, farms, housing developments, other organizations. You've hired or are hiring a consultant from Oneida Herkimer. He's an expert at working across the community to partner. So first goal would be to maximize the longevity of our current landfill. It's a financial investment and a county asset. To accomplish this, reduce landfill waste through the 4 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and rebuy. Avoid costly expansion into land that is hydrogeologically unsuitable for landfill operation. In the area that remains, that would be available, that's been proposed in the past for expansion, the layer of impermeable till is not thick enough for safe trash disposal. So we would have to keep trucking in large amounts of clay. That would be costly. To build the last 2 landfill cells, as you well know, The county borrowed $9 million and is paying back $15 million. We've got $11 million to go. That's $637,000 each year until 2032. So to fill up our landfill and then have to build new cells is something we really want to avoid. The second goal is to finance county solid waste services through integrated, sustainable methods. Pay off the debt and current costs through flow control and moving forward with the 4 Rs. To accomplish this, take responsibility for all the trash produced by county residents. Flow control will enable responsible management of the waste generated here in Cortland County and equitable payment of landfill costs by those generating the waste. Set tipping fees that best serve county residents and businesses. The landfill's fee for trash disposal by commercial haulers has not changed in 21 years. In other states, sale of recycled materials are being used to actually lower tipping fees. That's an option for us here in Cortland County. Develop a profitable operation to reduce, recycle, reuse, and rebuy solid waste. Compost organic waste. It both reduces waste volume and it can generate revenue. Expand recycling. All kinds of opportunities. Tompkins County is now paying for cardboard. Evaluate options for better use and disposal of construction and demolition debris. Collect, refurbish, and reuse electronic and school equipment. Purchase products that are durable, reused, locally produced, or recycled. That's both the county's own purchasing and educating and partnering with other organizations and institutions within the county. Lastly, utilize the current landfill more efficiently. The county's incoming solid waste supervisor would keep up to date on new ways to save or make money from managing waste. That would include developing alternatives for daily cover to reduce the cost of equipment and shale mining, and cost effectively managing the use of valuable airspace by trash, bud, shale, and alternative daily cover. I also signed up to speak on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Cortland County, and just wanted people to know that today at our board meeting, the League did approve this statement. The League of Women Voters of the U.S., for leagues to take, local leagues to take a policy, they either have to be U.S. or state league policies, or we need to have studied the issue. Well, the U.S. League of Women Voters has studied trash disposal for many years, waste management, and they support, quote, policies to reduce the generation and promote the reuse and recycling of solid and hazardous waste. And their history of studying this goes back to the 1980s when the U.S. League opposed incineration. So for the record, the League of Women Voters of Cortland County also endorses the proposed solution. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Francis Muller, followed by Marie Cox.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My sister used to be an avid fan of Arthur Godfrey and listened to him on the radio. I happened to be at her house one day when she was listening in, and one of the things that is stuck in my mind that Arthur Godfrey said is, humans are the only animals on earth that follow their own nest. And this is something we have to be more careful of than we have been. There have been many statements made by people who've been studying this for a long time, which I haven't, and they point out specific details of this thing, but some general things that I found on the web. There are many studies that are cited on the web, including several supported by the European Union. And one of the things I cited particularly was that in Germany they found that in spite of all the technology to prevent it, the fly ash from the incinerators went out, and not only the toxins on people, but spread in the pastures of farmers who are grazing their cows. The cows ate that poisoned grass, and that poison went from the cows into the milk, which then people drank. Doesn't sound as though that's something that we ought to be engaged in. And what we're doing, at the very least of this thing, although we're not incinerating here, we're enabling a neighboring county to do the same thing here in dairy country, which we might be reminded of. So, this agreement is something that I don't think is in the best interest of either us or our neighboring counties. One of the things that happened here several years ago when recycling started getting popular was that the legislature at that time encouraged people, in fact they provided free some recycling bins for compost. And I still have 3 of them that I've been using ever since. And I would encourage you to encourage other people to do the same. We are a nation that has been much spoiled. Everybody wants to do things the easy way. And the easy way, unfortunately, for most people has been just to throw everything into the trash, not worry about either recycling or composting or saving things. So I think you need to get on a marketing campaign to start encouraging people to compost themselves in their homes, to start our restaurants and their school cafeterias composting with their materials so that we can save that from going out into the landfill. In the book No Waste Solution by Paul Comet, he cites particularly some of the West Coasting. Mr. Comet apparently has traveled over a number of countries in Europe and in Asia, seeing how they just take care of their waste. And one of the things that I remember in his book was in San Francisco and some of the neighboring states, what they do is take all kinds of organic material that can be composted, bake compost, and give it to local farmers to enrich their land. So that's something that would both help save our landfill and also help local farmers improve their farmland. So on these 2 bases, I would hope that you would reconsider this agreement that seems almost to have been put on an express train and rushed through, and think about what the consequences are and how you can have a better solution, and you've had that until now. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marie Cox, followed by Ed Beer.
Good evening. I'm Marie Cox from Cortlandville. For me, the absence of solid financial information and information on health risks are the most startling and compelling problems with the DEIS. No matter the fact that the landfill has a double liner, liners do fail, and that leaves Cortland County holding the bag in terms of dealing with liner failure and the resulting environmental and health impacts. Expensive, risky, scary, depressing to property values and quality of life, and not adequately considered in the DEIS. During the scoping comment period in June of last year, Cortland County Health Department officials commented that a health impact assessment is needed for this project, and they described what such an assessment would entail. I've attached their comments to my statement, which I'll provide. However, the proposed Ash for Trash partnership is on such a fast track that such comments seem to have been ignored in preparing the DEIS. This particular omission is especially grievous. Why was the health assessment not included in the DEIS so that county residents could review its adequacy and comment during this current round of comments?
If by some chance such a health study will be included in the FEIS forthcoming, when would county residents, physicians, and health specialists have the opportunity to review and comment on its content and its interpretation or mitigation that's proposed by the consultants? Point 2. The minimal amount of incinerator ash testing publicized to date is insufficient and tells us little about the contaminant profile in the ash over time, which depends on incinerator operation and trash sorting practices prior to incineration to ensure that unsuitable materials don't go into the incinerator. Yes, the ash is supposed to comply with standards, but we in Cortland County have no control over how well Okra keeps up its operation. I understand that the fly ash, as opposed to the bottom ash, is particularly contaminated with dioxins, probably furans, and other dangerous chemicals. And that's what will be riding in those trucks, up to 24 a day, that will pass by us on Route 81, 13N, and up on the little roads to the landfill. Nowhere could I find an assessment of this on public health, either in day-to-day transit or in the event of a catastrophic accident involving one or more of these trucks. And when I say nowhere, I mean nowhere in the DEIS. Finally, to get back to the fiscal aspects of the proposed partnership, Cortland County taxpayers have paid for a financial study of same, but nowhere are the findings disclosed. The findings and supporting methodology should have been included as part of the fiscal analysis in the DEIS, so as to be subject to public comment, review, and scrutiny. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Our next speaker is Mr. Ed Beard. Ed Beard. It appears Mr. Beard is not in attendance. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment or address the legislature? Please come forward and state your name.
I have a theoretical proposition, and it will take less than a minute. And
Sir, could we have your name, please?
yes, please. My name is Arnold Valentino, and I'm a resident of the city of Cortland. And I've heard the various testimonies tonight. Let me just ask you this, or put this proposition. I'm guessing that all of you here on the legislature who own homes have household insurance. And it costs you several hundred or so a year. And I would ask you, why bother with that? What are the odds of your house burning down? Or a hurricane blowing it over? Yeah, the odds would be 1%, but still you buy the insurance. You say, well, it's smart. It would be stupid not to. Well, I've heard plenty of reasons tonight not to accept this DEIS. Plenty of reasons. The odds of it going wrong are very, very high. So I urge you to show the residents of Cortland County how smart you are and to vote against it. Thank you.
I'm Matt O'Rourke. I'm a McGraw Village resident, and I sit on the board. And I've read through a little bit of the DEIS, but I haven't read through the whole thing yet. And but I have not seen anything in reference to McGraw's water or some of the stuff that some of the other people have mentioned. And the importance of it to us is we just borrowed over $3 million to upgrade our water, replace the water lines. our village water comes from 2 wells, which are less than 30 feet deep, not much higher than that, much deeper than to the ceiling here. And that supplies all of our village residents and our schools. And we have had estimates done. It would be well over $1 million to connect from our village to the city of Cortland should something happen to our water. That's going to be our first initial expense, be well over $1 million. And so that's being brought up about McGraw. That's a pretty significant, some numbers right there. And I guess on that, the only other thing that I would say is 100 years ago, lead was safe. 75 years ago, asbestos was safe. We keep hearing that ash is safe, but we're just not seeing it. And really, and on that note too, right on South Hill in McGraw was recently a multi-million-dollar Superfund cleanup site from an old landfill, which was much smaller than the current landfill. So, we could stand to have a pretty big mess on our hands. So, thanks.
Is there anyone else in attendance that wishes to address the legislature? Please come forward and state your name.
My name is Lynn John Sr., live here in Cortland. I've been here a resident all but 5 years of my life. I'm 56 years of age, and every time we turn around, we're fighting for this, we're fighting for that. Well, I pay a little over $12,000 a year for just flood insurance, because I live next to the stupid dumb river. I've been there 14 years. Add that up. What's that average out to be? A boatload of money. And let me tell you, if I would have known about this back in the 90s, when I was out of state, I would have stayed out of state. I would have never come back here. But I was born and raised here. My father was a lifelong resident of Cortland County, even. He worked up until the day before he died. He worked for the city of Cortland, even, which is Cortland County Youth Bureau, with Fran Tokar, John Shear, and Don Homer. That's just a few of them that I can remember. My father passed away with cancer even. But he gave his life for this county. And let me tell you, you guys passed the Bud deal to go into Cortland County. I'm going to be at the gate, chained to it. So God bless you all. Because I'm going to stand there for my grandchildren and every one of your grandchildren also. God bless you all. John, J-O-H-N, Eaton Sr.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the legislature?
Thank you for your comments.
One announcement, I'd like to make the solid waste committee meeting for January has been rescheduled. Originally scheduled for tomorrow morning, it's been rescheduled to Wednesday, January 14th at 11 o'clock. With that, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you for coming.